And we are live. It's always fun to have those first few seconds of the stream. Welcome, good people of the interwebs. Today I have with me, obviously, John, who's always here, Toxic, and today Ludicrous is making a guest appearance. Hi there, Ludicrous.
Hello.
And my loving wife, Laughing, is here as well. And today we're going to talk about the leading role politics have in the destruction of just about any society. But before we do that, we will do some banter because no one's here yet. So I always like to start off with banter. Who wants to run their mouth first?
Don't all jump in at once.
I just wanted to say hi, Ludicrous, and cool that you joined. All of you as well, but Ludicrous seemed to be a bit reluctant to that, so yeah.
How's it going?
I was watching a video this morning having to do with LA County and in California. And apparently they won't call ICE to deport a illegal alien even if they attack the president or vice president.
Yeah.
What the
That's
fuck?
crazy. Or if you rape someone. Yeah,
because I mean they're illegal immigrants. They are to be considered a protected class.
Well, lovely. You know what happened to this? We must wipe out rape.
Well, I don't know what.
Only by toxic white males, obviously. Everyone else is free.
Rape,
I'm sorry, I'm not following their logic.
unless immigrant doing it.
Did you see? So, John, when I was reading, because I don't know which video I did, but I had actually looked up the definition of toxic male because I was like, what the hell does that even mean? You know, when you kind of just finally go, let's look it up. And I found it on Psychology Today, and it said what was funny was so funny because it said it's a term used in psychiatry and in gender studies. Like, great, that's we want to have those two merged, don't we?
Yeah.
That it's used to describe normal Western male behaviors that are harmful to society. So it literally does only include Western males. Like, so America, Europe, Canada. Are you kidding me? How is that?
It's even funnier than that because it's normal Western male behavior that harms society. Define harm.
Yeah, I have no idea. I don't. The thing took me aback. It doesn't make any sense to me. It made my stomach hurt a little bit.
Well,
it really did.
It is the ultimate bigotry disguised as anti-bigotry.
Well, I know that when the DSM-5 came out, right? The DSM-5 came out, and I know that even medical doctors did this outcry because it basically labeled every single behavior, as a sickness. Every behavior was in there as a mental disorder.
The EPA, American Psychology Association, how do you call it? Basically had I think it was August last year, a suggestion how to reach and work with male patients. And it was so fucking offensive. I mean, you guys know it's my line of work.
How they will what?
One moment, what?
How they will what? Repeat.
How to work with male people seeking help, male patients. And it was so fucking offensive. It's amazing that they even dared to write it down. And they had this whole article, and within that article, they linked to certain studies. And they really, really believe that people don't look at the studies they are linking to. Because one of the studies they use to talk about toxic male behavior is based on Hispanics in America.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to be rude, but if this is about all men, Why do you bring a study of a minority in a different country? Because in all fairness, minorities have different behavior anyway. And let's be honest. A minority Hispanic in America is not the same as an Hispanic man in Spain, for example.
No, Hispanics are not Spanish.
Hispanics are. There's been so much. Anybody below. Okay, so I'm just going to tell everybody. Anybody that lives in the Americas. You can test them. So they've been here long enough, right? Like my family, you test them and they will be a hybrid. And the majority of Mexicans, they do test out as related to Spain. Spain did that much screwing.
Yeah, they're also related to the indigenous population, which is why they don't look like Spanish people.
We have to get it right.
We're a hybrid. We're a hybrid.
That's what I'm saying, but they're not Spanish. Spanish people would
but
not
the
be
term,
called Hispanic in America.
I know, but the term Hispanic does have meaning. And
I know, but that meaning is distorted by using the term to relate to a country.
We have to get it right.
That's the term that they use.
Sorry?
That's the term we use over here as Hispanic.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but it's not Spanish.
Anyway, what did you want to say?
They got Spanish blood.
No, they're
Ludicrous, what did you want to say, mate? Guys, Ludicrous time.
I said we have to use the correct term. It's Latin X.
Yes.
Yes. But no, because Latin X is only women.
No, X is
No.
Latina or Latino. That's the reason of the X.
Right. Okay. Anyway, but they were talking in that psychology APA report. They were talking about toxic masculinity, and they were linking to studies. And I mean, they actually linked to the study of I forgot the word now. Bloody hell! As soon as I say it, you all know what I'm talking about. It's that domestic violence is always caused by men. And the police.
Yeah, it's the Duluth model.
The Duluth model. They were actually linking the Duluth model as a credible study, even though it has been debunked for the last 20 years. It's been debunked in every study.
It's been debunked by one of the people who drew it up.
Yeah. No, actually, the person who drew it up said that's not what the Duluth model is, or at least that's not what the Duluth model said.
What she said was, we literally made it up based on ideology. There's no science behind it.
So, okay, then I read a different story on that one. Fair is fair. But in any case, it has been debunked even by the official writers. I thought they had a different reason for it, but okay, doesn't really matter. And they are using it as an argument. That's not the Duluth model.
The APA indulged in extreme cherry picking.
But it's scary because
it's feminist science. You come to a conclusion and you look for what will drive you to that conclusion.
Hi there, Paolo. Not maybe. You're correct on that one, but it is scary in so far that this is another great example, and I'm going to use this a little bit as a segue to bring up the point I'm going to talk to about today. This is another great example of how politics is destroying our society.
I wouldn't call it politics.
But it is.
No, it is. I would think it doesn't it all stem back to that stupid book. I don't even know the term of it, written by the feminists that said everything has to be political. The person is the political.
No.
Some bullshit like that.
What I'm saying is that yes, it's in the sphere of politics, but a movement like feminism is a social movement. Are you with me?
Yes. But social movements are political as well.
Yeah, no. I know, but it's a matter of terminology. If you just say politics, people might think.
Wait.
Representatives.
No. Look at what politics means. Politics is the art or science of government or governing, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
feminism is the art of governing society. Just because they haven't been voted doesn't mean they're not. They are literally, that is what they're trying to do, is to govern people.
Yes, but they didn't. You got to understand that they didn't. Feminism was a broader social movement working on a broader, not in the purely political sphere from the start.
Well, okay, so
They seem to
the
influence.
fact is, though, but the thing is that when you talk about govern, right, to govern, basically it just means to administer public policy or affairs.
No.
So by definition, that was their intent, was to
No.
have public policy. It doesn't mean it has to be written down.
No.
Right?
No. That's my point. That's a differentiation. What they do is seek to affect change across all of society, which includes getting the reins of power, but is not limited to getting the reins of power. So they would see being dominant in academia to be just as much of what they're doing. It's not just about getting elected politicians. It's about social attitudes, what's acceptable, Me Too.
But the thing is, the whole social movement thing is all starting from politics. Feminism came from politics. Socialism is politics. Bolshevism is it's all politics.
You say it's all politics. No, I say the politics is part of the movement, not the movement is part of politics. Because they're social movements. When the working people fought for the right to collectivize, to have meetings, to strike, politics is the tool, not the objective.
I'm not 100% agreeing with you there. Yes,
well,
it's
you never
true.
do, mate.
No, I know, and there's a reason for it as well. Hi there, Talk, by the way.
It's about what they are actually wanting, and you're mistaking consequences for motives.
No, it's not about what they want. It's how they want to get there.
Yes, because they have to use the mechanism, but they're only wanting to get to is the motive. You have to understand the motive and say, okay, I want X. How do I achieve X? And then you say, okay, they've decided to achieve X, they do Y, therefore they're only interested in Y. No, they want to achieve X. If someone just gave them X, the Y is irrelevant.
Yeah, but that's the thing about politics. If they get what they want more.
No, but not if they were given it straight away, but then it turns into a fight, and then they have to struggle. And then all the people for whom the fight is their life take over. You can't look at the outcomes and then say that's what they wanted. You have to look at how the outcomes came to be.
I'm not really sure if I completely agree with that.
Well, of course you don't, because you're looking backwards. I try to understand what it was like before any of this shit kicked off and what caused it to kick off. And it's the same with feminism. Women were complaining about their role in society in the 18th century. It was 1848 before the Declaration of Sentiments at the Seneca Falls. It was another 50 years before the suffragettes really got going.
Yeah, but if we
These
look
are not trivial lengths of time.
No, I know. But if we look at, for example, the suffragettes, because these were elite movements.
Yes, but you're talking 150 years after feminism started.
Yeah, but it's not just feminism. Feminism is just one of the many examples.
No, oh, come on, don't switch the subject. You were saying feminism started to do X, and I'm trying to tell you, no, it started 150 years before that, and so you can't say it was what the the suffragettes were.
Even when it started to try and claim that the position of women needed to be improved. Hell, the reason why when men and women now divorce, the child goes with the woman. Back in England, it used to be that the child would stay with the man because he was financially responsible, etc. Then the feminists started. We're talking about the.
But you're talking about something that happened very late in the history of feminism.
No. This was at the very start. We're talking about 18th century. And women started fighting, or rather one woman started fighting, and feminists, let's call them feminists, they didn't have that name back then, started picking up on that fight so that if a man and a woman would get divorced, the child would go with the woman. And now women are complaining that if they get divorced, they are stuck with the children.
Okay, can I ask you a question? At what point did women start to get the child?
Sorry, again, at what point?
Did women start to get the child? Because they were still pushing this
18...
in the 1970s in the Britain. They were still pushing the argument that children went with the man in the 1970s in Britain.
1856, I think. I have to look up the thing
but
again.
That can only mean one place. My point is this: in Britain, the argument was still going on in the 70s that the woman lost the child. So it's a very late thing, and you're relating it right back to the start.
And yet still they're complaining that now they get the children and they...
Yes, I know they are now, but you're conflating very different arguments here.
The argument is still the same, though.
Not about child. But
about the hypocrisy.
You're making.
No. It's about the hypocrisy. They get what they want and then they complain.
I know. I'm not arguing about that. But the original point was about whether these things are primarily social movements that use politics or political movements that veer into the social. And my argument is they started for social movements that veer into the political. That was it. That was the argument we discussed at that started this discussion.
Oh well. I still stand by my point that politics is a driving factor in our societies, whether we like it or not.
I'm not arguing that point.
The funny thing is, though, that politics is not driven by the people; it's driven by the elite.
Always has
and
been.
Feminism is the elite, whether we like it or not.
Like it or not? No. Does anyone like feminism?
Hell, I believe even feminists don't like feminism.
Of course not.
So, yeah, there is that. But considering that we have a few people here, this is kind of the topic I wanted to talk to you about. Because in how far do politics destroy our society? And I'm going to look at Europe for this. I'm sorry, I need to burp a little bit. Oh, sorry. Too much cola. If we look at Europe, we see that the demography of the European countries is being forcibly changed. Now, I'm not sure if people know, and let it be first said, I am not a nationalist. No, that's not true. I am a nationalist. I'm not an ethno-nationalist, and I'm not in favor of people using ethnicity as a basis of being negative towards other people. Having said that, we do need to recognize that countries are based on ethnicity. And I have zero problem when someone from another country comes to my country, wants to live here. There's always 3 rules. You speak the language, you follow the law, and you make sure that you make your own income, you have your own job. Is there anyone here at this point in time that thinks that those 3 points are not contributing to a stable society? The silence is deafening. So we all agree that if you obey by the rules, speak the language, and support yourself, this is contributing to our society, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so
A little. Okay, come on, Ludicrous.
I'd say so.
Okay. So if we then say, you can also say people come to the country, they refuse to speak your language for whatever reason. Are these people integrating?
No.
The same goes with you have your rules, people are not following your rules. Are these people integrating?
Mm-mm.
And the last one is, oi, where did John go?
He likes to vanish.
Oh, let me see. Maybe he left me a message on why he vanished. Nope, not yet. Okay, maybe he'll be back in a sec. I hope he'll be back in a sec. So, and the third one was, there is John. Welcome back, John.
Oh, my fucking iPad. I hate it.
Don't scowl, mate. Don't scowl.
I do scowl because I fucking hate my iPad. I literally tried to switch to get the YouTube feed up so I could read the chat. I switched back to the Hangout and it just decided that literally opening the Hangout chat was me asking to leave the call. Huh?
Well, we were worried a bit.
Well, yeah, I worry about me too, but don't worry.
What are you, a normie? Well done, Paolo. Then bad.
I can't even see that bloody chat. Thank you, fucking shitty. I'll tell you something. There is no way on this planet I am buying another Apple product ever.
The Beatles
Sorry, I
will be
got a phone call.
John, the Beatles will be disappointed.
Yeah, that's all right. I don't care about them anyway.
Anyway, we're going back to what I was trying to talk about. There are 3 rules, as far as I said. People are welcome in any society as long as they abide by 3 rules. You speak the language, you follow the law, and you are self-sufficient.
Well, how are you going to overthrow the country if you follow those rules? Damn it.
That's a different story altogether. I'm going to say open-minded and say people from other countries do not want to come to your country to overthrow it unless proven differently. And here comes the kicker. What happens when a society takes in people that refuse to want to speak the language, refuse to see the authority of the laws of that country, and are living on handouts?
Then it's overthrowing the country. That there are certain sects, not everyone, hashtag not everyone, that do want to reclaim a country or take it back over. I mean, it's like nobody has learned from history. Look at what the Europeans did to America. They profoundly changed the entire nation and culture, right? And yet nobody takes that as a warning.
No. I always like it when people start talking about, well, America should allow their immigrants because they were immigrants once as well. And I'm like, don't you recognize that if what you say is true, you just gave the perfect reason why you shouldn't allow immigrants?
Yeah, someone did a video. I wish I knew who it was. I wish I'd saved it, but I lost everything when I lost my channel. They did a video where they said that, so the pilgrims coming over, if they were SJWs, and so they used the same arguments against the Native Americans that they use now, the opposite on regular Americans. And it was so sad and funny at the same time, because you could see that that's exactly what's happening. We are Western. When you look at what they want, when they talk about toxic masculinity and the laws that they're changing, or white supremacy, to be, when I watch enough people on the other side, they're saying that white supremacy is simply that the white men in Europe, because Europe was white, made all of the laws And by trying to enforce those laws, you're being a white supremacist because a white man came up with those laws.
Which kind of isn't true, to be honest.
Well, no, I'm just saying, I'm telling you what they're saying. I
No,
don't.
I understand.
Yeah.
And when you
consider
consider that they say the law of gravity is wrong because it was invented by a white man, trust me, when it comes to man-made laws,
It's politics is just, I think Modwain is right. Politics right now is destroying not only our countries, not only our cultures, but reality itself. Like
Yeah, but-
it's like we're living in bizarro world. Everywhere I look, everywhere I see, it's so insane now
Mhm.
that I'm terrified.
Yeah, but my point is that politics is a symptom, not a cause.
But there is so the one thing that I wanted to say, what Maud said, that if people come here and they refuse to speak the language, they refuse to work, they refuse to follow our rules, that means that they're not integrating. But the fact that they will speak the language, obey law, and work here, it doesn't automatically mean that they do integrate. Because when I look at the people around, for example, someone made a good point to me. Not so long ago, a few days ago, we had the King's Day, right? So on the playground that is actually in the area, it's a closed playground. You pay for use it, but it's a really, a lot of attractions. They actually organized, you celebrate the King's Day here, but they organized something for the children. So the families could come there. And there was games for the children, you could buy fries, hamburger, just something for the smaller children, so you don't go to the city, when it's really crowded. Now, and someone made a good point to me that I didn't see even one woman with her hair covered. But I see them regularly going on the playground. But I don't see them coming with their children when there is a games and plays because of the King's Day of the for the king of the country they are living in. So yeah, those people that I know, they do speak the language. They or their husbands are working. I know that much, right? I do think they actually obey the law. I mean, you can kind of tell, but they're still not really integrating in a lot of things. And they still keep apart and they still sit and talk mostly to each other, even though they speak the language.
Well, the thing is, and I agree with her, but the 3 rules I set are the minimum needed for integration.
True.
If you don't have that, you will never have integration. I mean, that people still choose not to integrate while still obeying those 3 rules, yeah, that's possible, but it's far less likely. But if we look at, for example, European countries, now Europe, up until I think 2008, but I'm sorry, I didn't look into this number really far. I think it was 2008, Europe was still known as Fort Europa. It was very difficult for non-Europeans to come and live in Europe. There are exceptions, of course. Those exceptions are Western countries and Western aligned countries like Japan, who in my humble opinion is a Western country, but they don't think so. So fair enough. But what we saw, and this is started by Angela Merkel, with the opening of the gates, so to speak, she pulled in a lot of people from the Middle East to come and live in Europe. And it had kind of a negative effect. And I'm going to show you a few things. Let me see if I can share it. Yes, I can. Now, this is a Wikipedia page. And this is a pie chart. If you can see it, you can, obviously. Here's the mouse. Here's the pie chart. About 76% of Germany is German. Now, about 3.5% is Germans coming back to Germany. So let's round it up. Round it down, actually, to 80% of Germany is German. Then we look at the other ones. Other Europeans, excluding Turkey, so Dutch, Romanian mostly, Romanian, Polish, is still 10%. Yeah, okay, that's bad. So let's look at this group. 5.5% is people from Syria, Turkey, Middle Eastern. Middle Eastern non-available, funny enough. So it's like 5%. 2.7 is other Asian. Other Asian can be anything. And if we look at the problems they are having in Germany, based on, let's say, 5.5 plus 2.7, so let's say 8% of the population. It is amazing. They have huge issues in a country where only 10% is non-Western immigrants. Because let's be honest, well, Africans is also non-Western, fair enough, but Americans are on average also Western. And if we look at the USA has problems with Hispanic people coming from Mexico and Honduras. Europe doesn't have that problem because people coming from Honduras that come to live in Europe are the same ones that are going to be welcomed in the United States as well. The ones that America doesn't want will also be the ones that Europe doesn't want, but we don't have to worry about them because there is no land bridge. If we look at the Middle East, there is a land bridge, and they actually come in with the short route. Now, if we look at the population of Germany on average, it is more or less, if we're not counting this, especially Romanians, Polish, and Middle Easterners, it is dwindling. And this is something we see in nearly all countries. I'm going to pick up the Netherlands now. Here we go. Scrolling down. It's not so easy to find if we're talking about the Netherlands, unfortunately. Where was it? No, that's religion. I don't care about that. It is part of the problem, but where was it? Ah, here it is. In the Netherlands, the major ethnicity is Dutch, which makes sense because it's the Netherlands. Okay, and I'm going to say it shows Indonesian, Indo, and Suriname. And I'm going to say, you know what? Those are Dutch too, because Suriname used to be a Dutch colony. Indonesia used to be a Dutch colony. So I don't care that people want to set them apart, but they don't have to set them apart for as far as I'm concerned. The fact that they are apart, I mean, if you were living in the Netherlands and you came to the Netherlands before 1980 from Suriname, you came from Suriname as a Dutch person going to the Netherlands. So the 2.1% are people that came after the 1980s. The same is true for the Indo population after the Second World War. But if we look at the other groups, Moroccan, Turkish, Iraqi, all in all, they are less than 5, well, let's say less than 8%. But if we see the huge amount of problems that come with them, it is difficult not to address this. And I've been talking for quite a while, so I'm curious what you think.
I remember being, when I was in high school, so it was a very long time ago, in Germany. I can't remember where exactly I've been in Germany, but I want to say about this because someone told me that till the big conf of migrants, Germany, for example, didn't know the problems they would face with it. Well, I remember it was like 15, 20 years ago, something like that. I've been in Germany in the small city when there was a lot of Turkish people, immigrants that came to live there. And the people were complaining how much problems comes with it, how less safe they are, how basically those people also don't know how to behave, like their city got really dirtier, you have a problem, you cannot, for example, address the issue with them because they are really aggressive, even if they learn German. they already are aggressive, and people were actually in that city, in that area, starting to look really less friendly for foreign people. And they were speaking of having, in general, back then, on nearly 20 years ago, simple people were speaking about having a problem with immigrants when the numbers were that much less. And they were also giving examples about youth, when, for example, someone from a German kid does something stupid, or throw something on the street or something, and you would approach and say, not as a parent, but as someone who witnessed that, hey, what are you doing? Pick it up, please. That's not the way, to behave. Then people could still do that, but to the youth, already from Turkish people, hell no, they would get aggressive. They would, they had this feeling that they don't have to listen to you or communicate with you. So the problem was visible already there back then.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe someone else would wanted to say something.
Yeah.
Okay. But we see this happening. And indeed, Paolo, most of the problems with people who are coming into the country is if they don't integrate. Now, I'm willing to believe that in, where were you, Portugal, the problem are Slavic people. It's possible. If they don't integrate, that's a problem. If we look at other countries in Europe, and I got the demographics of Germany, Sweden, and the Netherlands set up, but you know what? Sweden doesn't count that much. If we don't force people to integrate, and this is the funny thing, can you force people to integrate? I think we should try to. Because if we don't force them to integrate, you are creating enclaves within your own country. And if you create enclaves within your own country, you are basically dividing yourself.
There is a problem with that, though. It has been tried to force people together to integrate. In this specific situation, it was Northern Ireland.
Mm-hmm.
But in that case, there have been lots of trying to force, say, the Catholic and the Protestant communities to come together.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't help the situation.
Yep.
The best way to do it was to try and form an interface and allow the people to come there.
Well, I like to bring up Northern Ireland because Northern Ireland is a great example of how the problems of integration and how forcing people to integrate isn't really working. But Northern Ireland is also a good example of how one group is trying to colonize another country, even though they're not native to that country. Because if we look at Northern Ireland, the conflict there is between the English and the Irish, or the Protestants and the Catholics. But the ones that did come there came to dominate, I think. I think that's the best word. Now, you're Northern Irish, so you have a better view on that, I assume, than me.
Yes, it's. I'm not going. It's slightly more complicated than that. The problem that remains is that those people who came over initially to colonize Ireland were 800 years ago, and so what you have are people who are born and raised in Ireland, Northern Ireland, for several generations. They retain their distinctive heritage, and it is very distinctive, and they're proud of their heritage. And so it's very, very difficult to say those people aren't welcome here or they shouldn't be here because they were born there. Where else are they going to go?
Yeah. Well, that's the problem that I also want to address. Because the way we are pushing our societies, we are importing people. And the Northern Irish situation is somewhat different because the people in Northern Ireland didn't want to push people from England into their country. it was thrusted upon them. But funny enough, we see the same thing happening in Europe at this point in time. Up to 80% of European people, time and again, have proven, and this has been researched many a time, that they don't want massive immigration.
Mod, sorry, I have to pull you up. Not the English. Most immigrants to Northern Ireland were Scottish.
Okay, fair enough.
No, I mean, no, but it's like the whole problem is until 1707, England and Scotland were separate countries. Okay, and therefore the whole lot is a lot more messed up than misclassifying Scots as English.
Okay. Well, as far as I understood, the problem was more Protestant Catholic.
Yeah, from Scotland.
Simplification.
I'm sorry, Ludwig. I didn't hear what you said, mate.
I said that's a little bit of a simplification. There are people in high positions who are playing the two main communities off against each other. So there are people manipulating behind the scenes to cause aggravation on one side or the other to benefit themselves.
Okay. So you think there's more to it?
In Northern Ireland, there definitely is.
I'm curious to hear what you think, though.
In much respect.
What do you think is at the root? Or, well, maybe it's too easy to say it like that, but what do you think are part of the problems?
Well, there was quite a lot of discrimination in Northern Ireland, specifically against Catholics, because the Protestants were the majority in Northern Ireland. But it wasn't just Catholic society or areas that were put down. There were also different subsects of Protestantism were also almost on the same level as the Catholics with regards to discrimination.
Okay.
And so that's why I'm saying it's not simply a Catholic Protestant thing. It's a hierarchy, and then there's people on top manipulating the different, or well, it's not so distinct now, but there were, say, up until about the 90s, people saying, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hire the cheapest group of people I can. At the minute, that's Catholics. And so I'm going to hire all Catholics. But then that puts a pressure on the Protestant community because the Protestant community then can't afford to, they need a job. So what the people do who are in power say, well, the Catholics are willing to work for this amount of money. How much less are you willing to work for?
Yeah, so basically what you're getting is the elites playing out people against each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that exacerbated things.
Yeah, no, I understand. Well, thank you for letting us know, because I know somewhat of the Northern Irish question, but obviously I'm always ready to learn more. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a very complex question, and I just have a bare minuscule amount of. I've lived here since it was born, and I even have a very minuscule concept of everything that's happening.
But I believe you, and that's why I'm actually happy that you're here. But what I'm going to talk about in the European context is very different than the Northern Irish context, because the difference being that the Northern Irish situation is something that happened over years, hundreds of years. What we're seeing in Europe is that we're seeing the fast replacement. It's not nice to say replacement. It's probably not the best word, even though the Kalergi plan has been proven to be a fact. But the replacement of people by different cultures, and these people are getting basically the same thing is happening in Europe now as what happened to the Northern Irish Protestant Catholic thing. Groups are being put against each other. And one group is trying to be law-abiding, and the other group, not so much.
Well, in Northern Ireland, both groups had sections that were not law-abiding, and there was the Protestant paramilitaries as well as the Catholic paramilitaries, as well as the police force, which is very corrupt, as well as the army, which was dangerously run.
That's the thing, though. As soon as people start feeling that they have to defend themselves for whatever reason, the rule of law is gone. And you can have a police force, you can have an army, but you do not have the rule of law. And this is what we saw in Ireland, where people were at each other's throat, which is, in my humble opinion, a huge problem.
Yes, I did hear an analysis done. There was a talk about 10 years ago that I went to discussing it, and they were saying that in the early days, in the 1960s, 1970s, there was a very strong Marxist element creeping into the IRA side. So that shows it's kind of where they got their leanings from.
Yeah, and funny that you mentioned Marxist, huh? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, so but this is the problem, and we have an expression in Poland saying basically meaning, I'm not going to say it because it's useless, but it's basically meaning grain to grain, and you have a whole bunch of it. And because Mod didn't like to use the word replaced by, but to me this is what actually is happening. And don't get me wrong, I'm not against people from other cultures, other ethnicity. I'm not against people who come in here, even if they indeed are going to be part of our society. But I do think we are being replaced, because we are being told, it's in a lot of things. Like, we are being told, the Western women and men are being told that if you can't afford, for example, if you can't afford a child or another child, then you don't have a child. And there is a big issue, especially when I watch those documentaries from England, there is a big issue that a girl is sitting on a welfare and she has a baby already, or a 2-year-old, and she's with her boyfriend or her husband, and she's going to have another baby, and she said, because I really want to. And a few years ago, I would understand people being outraged about it, but right now I wouldn't tell that girl or that woman not to have another baby, because if she has half of a brain, she will say, wait a second, my neighbor has 6 children, pregnant with 7th, gets the welfare, everything is okay, we support that, I cannot have a child. So all those small bits, when you add them, how things are happening, even though Mod doesn't like to use word replaced, I actually am using that word. We are being replaced, because there are also other things when we are being told not to do or to do, which makes sure that there is a less of us, which makes sure that we don't cultivate families and a way of being that made us successful. But when other cultures want to do that, they all were supported in our countries. So, yeah.
Can I break in just for a second, because it reminds me of what's happening in the United States right now. So I don't know if you guys know what the Amish are. You know what the Amish are?
Religion.
Yeah, it's a religion, but they're basically, all of a sudden, there's all these reports coming up now saying that the Amish population is exploding, it's out of control, blah, 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 because the Amish have started having 7 children. Now, the Amish are predominantly white, right? So they're talking about
7 children.
What?
Didn't they always have many children?
Well, yes, they did. But now all of a sudden they're starting to talk about it in a derogatory manner. And then at the same time, you have this sneaky thing coming into Utah and other schools and everything where they have billboards everywhere that tell people that only two, it's up to you. Like they've been programming for the last 15 years that we can't have children. So it's like there's something fishy going on. I don't know what it is, but it does feel like we're being erased, kind of.
That's the point I was slowly working towards, because if we look in the Western world, we've been told time and again how we need to have less children, and the push for smaller families, and this is something that comes more or less natural with high amount of prosperity and wealth, but at the same time we're actually being pushed towards it. Because if we look at countries like any European country, America, Japan is a very good example of this as well. We see that the growth of these people is below replacement rate, and they are pushing towards saying, okay, you shouldn't have children, whilst at the same time they're saying, well, we need to import people from other countries because we are below replacement rates.
And the other things that we are being told is like, when we are being told to have children, we are being told to also have children later, because first education, career, and whatnot. And I'm hating, truly, with all my heart, I'm hating when we are being told at school things like women are not only to have children and be in the kitchen, and we tell our girls to first educate and go for a career, because women should have a choice and not only be in the kitchen, only have children. Now, I'm not saying that every woman needs to have children, cannot have a career. It's seriously your choice. The problem is, well, there is a many problem with that, but we not tell the other side of the story, that very often women who don't have children at certain age, they get depressed and they regret that. We're not telling them that, yeah, we tell you that, you know, you be 30, 35, you start to try for a child, and that's fine because you will have a career. We're not telling the young girls that you also statistically have way less chance to have a child, and you will be torn apart between keeping your career and having a child. And I'm thinking, like, when you tell children about, you know, to speak to the class when there is 30 people, right? And you say to the girls, you want to motivate them that they shouldn't be just mother and they can do so much more and better in life. It's like, first of all, in a class of 20, 30 children, there is a few children who have staying at home mom, and they will feel basically a hindrance. They might pick up on that one because, well, my mother only stays. And the rest of the children, if they're smart, they might think, okay, despite having me, my mother could also have a life. And this is what we tell children and how we program them to be adults. So we become not only smaller families, but we also are becoming older families, which do have also its problems. Let's be honest about this. So I agree they're toxic, that we are being erased. And
Well,
the only question is,
to be fair, I do want to say something, to be fair. I went, while we were talking, I went to the United Nations Population Fund, right? So they're basically, this is population control. And they've been successfully reducing population everywhere. And so it may just be, honestly, that they're reducing population everywhere. We just don't, we feel it more impacted by us because our own governments are only targeting a specific group. But I assure you, worldwide, they are doing the exact same thing everywhere.
but
Everywhere.
Well, there is one place they're not doing it. or rather a few places, but there are places where they're not doing it.
Well, there's a couple of countries. There's a couple of countries in the Middle East that have ended their policies, but the amount of propaganda that the UN Population Fund is feeding into Africa, even though I know Africa has had a population explosion, I get that. But the areas that they've successfully gotten in their foothold into the education programs, you're starting to see a decrease and an increase in parents, women taking birth control. So it is, as much as I everybody knows I love conspiracies. I'm like all about the conspiracies. The fact is that it really is a global thing.
Yeah.
It really is a global thing. They are really pushing for no number increase and decrease.
Unfortunately, we can no longer say that it is a conspiracy.
Yeah,
Because it's been proven so many times. They openly talk about it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's what makes me mad. When I had somebody say that the United Nations didn't have a population fund, and I was like, it's like literally right there, right in front of her face. It's really there. They're really doing it, and it's terrifying. You know, it is terrifying because at the same time as all of this, white people, and I hate to use that term because nobody has a definition for it, but we're being shoved aside and losing our culture and being told that we're bad. And so then it just, I don't know.
But
I don't know.
here's what I'm curious about. It's a question, how come it changed so fast? I remember that, for example, for my mother's age, and she's like 66, yeah, so for that generation, it was pretty normal to have a first child in your early 20s, right? And for the generation then of my grandmother, it was like you would be 21 and you would have 2 kids often, or you'd be 22, 3 and you would have often 2 kids. Okay, so we've gone very fast from, and those the same people, like my mother, this generation, and surely the generation of what I would call my grandmother, when they see someone that's 18 or 19 or 20 living with the boyfriend, just living in a flat with a boyfriend, they are already freaking out that you are too young. And I'm like, how come it changed? Well, with your generation being 20, it was like you're supposed to get married soon. With your generation being 22, you would have at least 1 kid. And when I'm 22, well, I'm not anymore, but I'm 22, for example, and just living with a boyfriend, not even, planning to have a kids or marriage, that generation freaks out that it's too early, and it happens so fast, because it's not even that, with 3 generations later, and we think that, no, the same generation for whom it used to be normal. And I'm sometimes thinking, why really it changed that much? What happened? I mean, partly, I think part of that is that we always see the problems we have, and we think that the other, to do the other thing, it would be only better, but we don't assume that, to do the other thing would bring other problems.
Well, they just, the bottom line is they want the population down to 2 billion. They've been successful. So the Western world was controlled by propaganda. We folded really easily. That would be all your whiteys were controlled by propaganda. China, their population is going to go. It's dropping extremely fast every year if you keep a look on it. The replacement versus the thing, they had to use obviously coercion there. So now there's only really a couple of areas left that they need to get control of. One of them is Africa, and that's where they're having the biggest problem, is because they don't trust white people. And I don't see why they should in Africa with all the scientists going down there and doing what they do. But it might induce something horrific and scary. Because whenever the news is already saying that Ethiopia is going to have another crisis, then you have to stand up and take notice, because it sure seems like they are weeding out the numbers quite quickly. But we're going to see it more in the West because there was less of us in the first place,
Yeah.
right? So, in all honesty, I think it's just going to get worse before it gets better, until they get to that 2 billion marker where they can see it drop to 2 billion by like 2050. They're going to ramp it up.
But I don't
And-
see the. But I don't see the population control within, for example, Muslim countries. I don't see that.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Is there was I can't remember which country it is in the Middle East where they actually did have population control measures.
Yeah, but one.
Yeah, just one, but then they took it back because they probably realized what was happening.
Yeah.
Now is not. So the governments that care about their culture, they've realized what's happening, that they are going to get that 2 billion marker. And so they realize if my people can breed as quickly as possible, we're
Yeah.
going to have that control block. And that's so in America, because the Amish are breeding so quickly now, because it's just it's exponential, right? But the Amish are conservative, and so that's the only reason they're bringing it up, because they will have that voting block. And that's why they won't bring in Venezuelans here right now, or like Vietnam people. They really are trying only to allow migration that is willing to go with the left and not willing to go with, the conservative right or that cultural thing. But that's why we're not seeing it in the Middle East, because they obviously have figured out the game. And they're like, well, whoever's breeding right now, in 2050, they will be in control.
Yeah, and the problem is also that we it's something Mod started to say, that we pushed also for that because of our economic situation. I mean, people always think that you have children only to give life and to sacrifice yourself. But I agree with Mod what he's saying always. Now people having children really so that someone would take care of them in the old age. That's also true. We do say children are our future, and when we see that differently, because for example we don't see it anymore as living in home with your daughter or your son who will take care of you, but we also talk about things like, okay, we need young people to pay the taxes, to basically pay for my retirement, my healthcare, blah 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 blah. Even look at China, when they said the long time ago, when they had this one child policy. Yeah, why the girls were killed? Because the man was supposed to take the father's business, make money when he's adult, and help the parents. That was expected in that culture. And because we have that good, basically, we have we still have, we probably won't have for long, but we still have healthcare, we have support when we got old. We don't find it maybe that necessary to have children who would take care for us, because you have houses, you can have nurse who come to home, help you when you cannot live at home anymore. You have those houses when they will take care of you. Now you can argue which one is better or nicer or whatever, but at the same time I agree on that with Maud, that we have so much and we're so rich that we only start to see children as hindrances. And that's really a scary thing to see.
At least until it's too late.
Sorry?
At least until it's too late. There are a lot of women who are reaching, say, over the 40-year mark who are kind of getting very anxious.
Well, that's one of the funny things about feminism, to be honest. And I didn't want to talk about feminism that much today, but how many old feminists, are actually complaining about the fact that they're old feminists and therefore don't have children. It doesn't get better than that. Oh no, feminism is all about freedom of choice and blah, 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 blah. And now I'm old and I don't have children and I regret every choice I ever made. Yeah, I'm sorry, but then why are you pushing this?
Yeah, it's true. I don't know what the fix is, but everything that I see is that this train is out of control, speeding down a mountain, and I don't know how we're even remotely going to stop it, especially when crazies are starting to go after banks. Banks are denying people, like, could you imagine not, like, your credit card getting shut off because of your political ideology?
Yeah,
Because that's happening. That's happening now in America. And they're passing these weird laws that I don't even know how, they're not constitutional. That's what I don't understand. Like, all these laws they're passing are not constitutional, but I would say as long as Americans hold on to the Second Amendment, we'll be fine. But if they get somebody in office that can take away our guns, then I don't know what's going to happen to the rest of the world, because it will go into civil war. And
no, it doesn't have to, but that is the most likely outcome. And the worst part is the next war, the next civil war, will be a white supremacist war.
Oh shit.
It will be. And it's not even because white people feel that whites are supreme, but it's the only way they can protect their societies. Because funny enough, all people coming into the Western world come from outside of the Western world.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look at Western people outside of the Western world, or if we look at white people outside of the Western world, their lives are forfeit. We see countries like Zimbabwe and South Africa absolutely destroying their own economies just so they can spite the white man. If we look at, for example, what Zimbabwe did with the white farmers, if we look at what South Africa is doing now with the white farmers, I mean, it's absolutely hurting their own bottom line because they have a food problem because of it. But hey, look at us. We are being negative towards the white farmer because the white farmer is so bad. Yeah, but now you can't feed your people.
And who will come help those people?
Well, no one.
Well, I fear Europe will.
Nope. Even Europe won't help them. That's the thing, because I think it's 1 or 2 years ago. I'm not sure. Anatak, if you're still in the chat, you should know this. Avi Yemeni was talking on the streets in I can't remember which city in Australia. He was talking to people in the streets about letting in the white refugees from South Africa. And people turn them away. They're not refugees. How come you can say they can't be refugees? They're white. That's the mindset people have moved themselves in. And this is why the next war will again be a white supremacist one. And I hate it because that's absolutely not the right way to go. But people will align themselves based on ethnicity and no longer on the ideological truth of the policies that created the West. Because the ideological truth about the West was that everyone could be a member of the Western societies as long as they partook. This is, for example, if we look at America, America started as a bunch of individuals and it became a melting pot. And everyone thinks, yeah, well, that means that every ethnicity can be part of the melting pot. Yeah, well, theoretically speaking, at best, but no, they can't because people have to show an interest to become part of that melting pot. If we look, for example, at the Italians or the Irish that came after the start of the 20th century. I mean, Gangs of New York a movie is based on the reality of immigrants fighting each other over control over certain pieces of New York. But at the same time, these people did integrate. They did learn to speak the language. I mean, how many stories of Italian immigrants I know that went to America where their parents told their children, we do not speak Italian, not even at home, because we are American now. It's a mindset. You
It
cannot,
is a mindset. That's how
Sorry?
I feel, Modwain. No, I agree. It's a mindset. Like, I feel like I am an American. My history started when the first person in my lineage stepped on this ground. Like, I feel so strongly about it, and I really wish that other Americans would do that, and I wish that, you know, Brits would do that, and I wish the Frenchie would do that, just for one moment to feel at home again. Nobody feels at home again because they're all in America. The African American, Asian American, Korean American, Chinese American. It's like, stop it. We can never unite. Huh?
how can you feel at home when your home is so divided that you don't even know which subgroup you belong to? I've seen Americans, black Americans, and I'll call them black Americans just as a description because they are Americans who happen to be black. But if you would call them African American, they will actually feel offended. They have absolutely fuck all to do with Africa.
Yeah,
And
that's true. It's usually all of the shit is usually just in like the big cities.
But
People aren't like that. Like on my block, we have every diversity that you can possibly think of. We have single parents, we have polygamists, we have couples without kids, we have multi-family levels, we have black, brown, Chinese, Korean. We have everything on my neighborhood. And nobody gives a shit because we all share the same culture on our block. And we've only had one time where these two ladies moved in that didn't obviously share our culture. And we have gays too, don't worry. But these two women,
off the roof yet?
they were fighting all the time and getting cops sent around here. And we don't want cops on our block. So they were disrupting our culture. So
But I agree with you, and not that it's a mindset. For example, I give you that example. Obviously, I go to a lot of playgrounds, having a 3-year-old, and at first I was talking to him in my language, in Polish, because they said it's the best. But he started to separate himself from other children when I would speak Polish to him. So I would start speaking, Dutch. And then I thought and actually this is how I want to keep it, because I want people around me to be able to understand me. And I want, for example, when my son does something wrong and I talk to him about this, I want the other kid understand the situation too. And the other kid is most likely Dutch or speaking Dutch, and he's not going to understand Polish. So we're in the Netherlands. Of course, I do speak Polish at home, and it's not like I'm saying I'm not going to speak Polish. But when I'm in public, I'm trying, if it's possible, speak Dutch. And for example, a friend of mine, she doesn't speak Dutch enough yet to speak to talk in Dutch, but she speaks English. And when we are in public, when we are in the bus, when we are on the playground, whatever, if there are people around us, we actually speak English, because I feel like, okay, nearly everyone speaks English here. This is the only way I can make people understand what we're talking about. It doesn't matter that you're not directly part of the conversation. I'm here and I want people to be able to understand me. And it felt weird. I remember one time I stayed longer with my little man at one of the playgrounds, and there came, I think, Turkish family, yeah, 2 women with a lot of children, and there was me and my boy, and they were all nice to me, and they were all speaking Dutch, because to me they spoke really decent Dutch, but they only spoke Turkish to each other. And then I'm like, this is not how it's supposed to be. This is not how I would like to be, because I'm in the country and spoken language is Dutch, and that's it. And if I don't like it that much that it's disturbing me from having a social life, then maybe I shouldn't be here. Well, it doesn't disturb me, but indeed the mindset of the understanding that you cannot have everything. If you go to live to other country, you chose to live in other country. I know sometimes you wouldn't choose it, but the situation for you was very bad. I understand that, but still be grateful, because the fact that you didn't want to leave your country, but your situation was that bad that you had to, and other country allows you to live in that country, be grateful for it and be respectful about this, because in the end that situation is better than the situation you run away from. That's what I would say. I hope if foreign people, in no matter what country you are in, if you are originally not from that country, I would like people to think about that.
Anyway, it is double, because when we talk about what our society needs, we kind of see that our politicians do exactly the opposite. Now, I wanted to show you that, for example, in Europe, Hungary has absolutely chosen for their own society. They built a fence in their own country, separating their country from the rest of Europe, even though it's part of Europe and they have an open border policy. And they still have their open border policy, so you can still go from the land of Hungary to the land of, for example, Germany. I think that's next to it. There are other countries next to it. But you can't go from the land of Hungary into the land of Hungary past a few fences. And
Germany, you mean?
No, I'm actually meaning in Hungary. I think a few hundred meters inside of the country's border, they basically made a second border just to stop the illegal immigrants.
Okay.
They weren't allowed to put it on their own border, and they basically said, okay, we won't. We're still going to put it up, though.
Cool.
And illegal immigrants are then stuck between the official border and the new border. And I mean, they can, ask for asylum and all those things, but they're not allowed into the country illegally. Done. And what we are seeing, for example, in Hungary is that of course, there are left-wing ideologues there as well, but the population is so in favor of their own government. They're actually applauding it. They're actually fighting for their government. The government allowed these people, the Hungarian people, law-abiding citizens, are allowed to carry guns again. Basically, in Hungary, we're seeing what's happening when the government actually chooses for their own population, which is why the European Union hates the Hungarian government. Now, we see the same thing happening in Italy. The Italian government is trying to choose for its own people as well. But you're not allowed to. But at the same time, and I am going to share this, at the same time, what we also see happening in Europe is the following. They seize rocket launchers and a huge weapon cache of weapons in Lyon. Because, hey, there is an enclave, and these people within this enclave are readying themselves for fights. And this is the latest I heard. I mean, this is actually from today, if I'm not mistaken. But this isn't the only one. I've seen reports. Sorry, I've seen reports of weapon caches in a lot of how do you call those things again? I can't remember now. Mosques. Thank you. Couldn't remember the word. There is absolutely something going on in Europe. There are enclaves in America. I mean, we've got the first immigrant that became a police officer in Mississippi. What was his name? Noor, who killed a woman who reported being raped, and they went out to go to help, whatever, and they killed an unarmed woman who was barefooted. And the immigrant police officer felt that he had no other option. And the American judicial system kind of did say that he was wrong, and they did convict him, though not for the immediate crime, but I think he was convicted for wrongful death or something silly like that. But at the same time, this is what happens when we are pushing our diversity quota so far that we can't see our ass from our fucking belly anymore.
We have laws that are different for different sects of people. Like, obviously our immigrants and everything, but like if you're homeless, the different rules that you have to follow for like public school, they're like totally different. And so it's like this weird trend of making all of these special rules that don't apply to other or certain sects of people. And it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
But how can a society survive if you have different rules for different people in your society?
It won't. I think society is crumbling right now. And the only thing that's going to save us is some huge, monumental, natural disaster. Whether that's like another Black Death plague or, volcano going off, but I just think it's done. I hate to say that. I hate to be so negative, but I think we're done. I think the Western, unless something big happens, I think we're done. We're done. If we don't stop the SJWs now, we're done.
Well,
That's all I see it as.
I hope you're wrong, but who knows? But to be honest, I'm sorry. I had to go to the conversation. I had to break it because I want to respond to something. Alicia, I see you. Oh, okay, sorry. I want to respond to something that Warp Reflection said. My son's mate was born in Poland, raised there 7 years. His family moved to Ireland. He refuses to speak Polish in public. He got shit from a Polish manager at Amazon when she found out he is Polish. And I'm willing to believe that Warped Reflection because basically Polish people around who hear me talking to my son in Dutch, they are basically they often negative about this, not in a aggressive way or something, but they somehow always manage to show that they are disapproving that why wouldn't I talk Polish to my son. And when I basically tell them, at the moment it's too much for him and he needs to learn one language first, then not everyone understands why it's Dutch. I mean, a lot of them do, but some of them, yeah, but why it's Dutch? I said, well, because we are here, because he has a school here, because he will have a friends here, because everything he needs to do here, it's in Dutch. So we are still strong about our culture, our language. At the same time, I would like, sometimes I think, if foreign people come to Poland, we want them to speak Polish. We do want that they learn Polish language. So at the same time, I'm thinking like, as a Polish person, imagine that when you go somewhere, you feel very strong about your culture, but the people from that country where you go to might also feel strong about their culture and they want to understand you and know what you're saying. So that's double. But indeed, there was like a YouTuber, also a Polish YouTuber, I don't remember her name, but she lives in America, and she doesn't speak Polish anymore to her daughter because her daughter was also a problem with learning language, and basically specialists say it's too much for her, first one language then the other, so they obviously decided for English. And the amount of bullshit she got on her from Polish people on her channel, that how come she forgets her culture and all that, was really a lot more than you would expect, when she felt she had to actually apologize and explain why living in US, and I think her husband is also American, I'm not sure of that, but why, while living in US, she chose the first language for her daughter to be English, because it was too much for her daughter to learn two languages at the same time.
Well,
What if the language is hard? Like, my daughter is going to be staying in Korea for quite a few months, and I think about it because they have two sounds that we can't even make. We've been practicing and trying, can't even make it, and they're consonant sounds. So it's not like, do you know what I mean? About that, because I mean, obviously she's going to follow the culture, right? But it's like, what if it is hard? I don't know. I just throwing it out there because I was thinking a lot about it, because she is going into, a totally foreign place, and holy crap.
well,
I maybe start thinking now.
now you're talking about language, and I mean, you can learn to make those sounds once you know how to make those sounds. And it's kind of funny because Dutch isn't that hard of a language, but we do have some sounds that you don't really have in any other language. So most people, for example, the G klank. Most countries, most languages don't have the G klank. Most people don't know how to make it. Yeah, most people, especially non-English speaking, they usually replace it with the K sound, because that's the one that resembles it most closely to them. Okay, fair enough. I don't care. But once you live here, eventually I will be able to teach you the difference between the G and the K klank, for example. It's a completely different letter anyway. But it takes time. It's the same that people always say that in Japan, they replace the L with the R sound, which is somewhat true. Not really, but somewhat true, because they don't have the L sound in their language. But it's not
I'll
that they
say that makes sense. That makes sense. If you don't, like, instead of worrying about perfecting it, to just kind of do the best you can.
Yeah.
Look at me.
Yes.
And eventually you will get better at it. It just takes time.
But it's a mindset, and I can speak, for example, in the Netherlands. When people do see you trying, they are more likely to be patient with you and to help you, and they are happy that you speak their language. Like, when I came here, people were thrilled when I started to speak Dutch, and it was really broken Dutch, but they were so used to foreign people not speaking the language, not even trying, that when someone came from other country who actually spoke broken language, because at some stage of learning, I started to speak Dutch, but it was terrible, that they were thrilled. Most of them were very happy, very respectful to the fact that they even considered to learn their language. And I felt like, what the hell? Why did I even consider to learn your language? I mean, if I want to live here, that's kind of logical thing to do. So that shows you what the immigration meant to Dutch people. That makes sense.
But the thing is, if we look at what, let me see if I do this right. The thing is, if we look at what integration should mean or what it has become, the reason why integration in most Western countries is failing is because we have given up on our rule of law, and our politicians are no longer interested in what the people feel, but what they need to make you believe is true.
Oh, I agree, Modwain.
And therein lies our problem. And now I made, not too long ago, actually, I think 2 weeks by now, I should really make another video. 2 weeks ago, I made a video about how democracy is dying in the Western world. I made it in English and I made it in Dutch. And my Dutch channel is absolutely small. I mean, I've got 10 subscribers. I have a visual count of 0. So the fact that someone actually responded to it, someone I've never heard before, is great. And I had a good talk about it. And he made it sound like this is the problem I was describing is a left versus right dichotomy thing. And it seems that way. But as John proven earlier in his takedown, it's an authoritarian versus non-authoritarian problem. And our democratic process has stopped being democratic. And we are currently in, how do you call it? An authoritarian Western world. I mean, it's a miracle that in America, President Trump actually became the president. The mainstream media was so focused on trying to block what's his face, Bernie Sanders, and the bloody idiot sold out afterwards, that they totally ignored Trump. And then Trump totally destroyed the mainstream medias and the industries and the main money suppliers candidate, which was Hillary Clinton. Because it's funny that people talk about Trump as if he's the money candidate, but Trump wasn't the money candidate. He was the outcast. In all fairness, I didn't even believe he would get through the Republican nomination thingy. No one believed. Yeah, but no one believed that he would.
Oh, by the time he popped, there was someone. I don't remember what he said, but I remember I told you he will be the candidate for a president, and you told me no, he won't. I said yes, he will. And when he popped this "Make America Great Again," I was like, and that's a big chance people will vote for that. I just fucking knew it. And I hoped for it too, because I'm not a big Trump fan, although he did more good, more positive than I expected. I need to say that. But I just didn't want Hillary. I really hoped it wouldn't be Hillary.
Yeah, and indeed, Warped, they are currently again going after Bernie because Bernie is again wanting to become an American president. And if it is Bernie against Trump, you know what? If it would have been Bernie against Trump in 2016, I'm not sure Trump would have won. If it's going to be Bernie against Trump in 2020, I don't think Bernie stands a chance because Trump has done so much for the economy that a lot of the disenfranchised people aren't really disenfranchised anymore. So there is that. But yeah, our politics is being controlled by big money. And in all fairness, I think that in America, the president can have a maximum of 2 runs. So, for example, 2 terms. Thank you. That's a way better word. I forgot it, but you're correct. Thank you. But I think all politicians should have a 2 terms limit, a 2-term limit.
Can I make a point, Modwain? I do believe that from what was told, if Bernie Sanders had been successful as being leading the charge, he would have won. And a lot of people who were going to vote for Bernie just turned around and voted for Trump. I also just want to say hello to Michael Keller over there, and I hope you enjoy the chat.
Yeah, by the way, Michael, criticism as always is welcome. You can always check the rest of my shit out on my channel. I always look forward to having new blood. But no, seriously though, hearing new opinions, it's always welcome. Well, wait a second. My wife is waving at me now. Why are you waving at me?
Because I want to see this.
Oh, it's just a joke. Anyway,
I know.
I know she did in the primaries. That's how she beat Bernie. Well, no, yeah, she didn't beat Bernie. She basically cheated. And the funny thing is, and I so love this about the 2016 American presidency thing, and it also shows how terrible our democracy has turned. Now, I'm saying terrible, and it's almost as if America is bad, but in all fairness, this is true for every Western country, unfortunately. If we look at America, Trump had won. Hillary had a few more votes, but she was reluctant. She didn't really accept it. And then one of the independent candidates demanded a recount in, I think it was Florida. Jill, what's her face? I forgot. And they did a revote. And in that revote, Hillary lost votes. Not revote, recount. They did a recount, and in that recount, Hillary lost votes. Take what? I never asked me for criticism. Very dangerous. Very, very. Michael was researching legal ownership of a halberd a few months back. I don't want to be rude. I have a long spear, a 40-pound bow, a Viking sword. I am a reenactor, and I'm not really impressed by melee weapons. But I am cool that you want to have a halberd, Michael. What kind of halberd? And it is totally off topics. Sorry. I hate this. I always go off topic. Back to the topic at hand. So what we are seeing is that our politicians are basically bought by big money, and we've already seen in the past how organizations like the Open Border Foundation from Soros, but other organizations as well. I mean, Murdoch's news network, they all do what they can to destroy our societies. And we let them because we've forgotten what a democracy is. On my Dutch channel, I often make videos proving how the media, even the printed press, is lying to us. And people are like, yeah, but it doesn't really matter, does it? And there's something scary about that. But anyway, I've been talking for a while. Anyone else wanted to say something?
Well, yeah. Just thank you. That the thing that you talk that democracy is dying. Yeah. To me, democracy died. Can you have democracy without freedom of speech? Oh, we don't have freedom of speech.
Yeah, but you can't have democracy without freedom of speech. It's not easy, but you can, because Europe never had freedom of speech. Ever.
Okay, let's put it different. We don't have it officially, but can you have democracy with the amount of political correctness we have now? For a few years already. Because I don't see it happening.
Again, yes. Go on, sorry.
I would see. I'd frame it a totally different way. And I'm sorry if I'm talking about Britain, but that's what I know. The British system was designed for a very different society. It has creaked and groaned and tried to cope to the massive changes we've had, particularly since since the Second World War. in terms of totally different expansion of the sorts of works people do and the balance of work people do, and it's not up to it. It's been papering over the cracks for so long, and we can look at the SJWs, we can look at the feminists, we can look at all these things, but the reason why they have a foothold is because the whole system is fundamentally dying. The Americans, when they did their constitution, they anticipated having to redo it at some point. I can't remember the interval. It might have been 200 years. Because any system is only fit for the time it's designed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then society moves on. And then you have to adapt the system to cope. And the problem is it's become more and more maladaptive as the changes they make are in the exact opposite direction.
So what
And, sorry.
what John is saying is we need Hadith.
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think we need, you see, here's the thing. Those with power will always strive for more power.
Yeah.
And that
It's
is
not
what's
even about-
happened. That is
It's not
what's
even
happened.
about money.
No, it's power.
Yeah.
Those with power will always accrue to themselves more power until, and in our modern societies, that means a bigger and bigger slice of the economy and everything. And it's throttling. The government is now throttling the society. So you need a hard reset, which says, okay, what the hell do we want government to do? And if you cleared away like 90% of it, you wouldn't notice, because I'm not saying expenditure, because the big expenditure is the things people care about. Defense, health, welfare. Okay, they're the things people care about. But that's not the problem. The problem is we're supporting a massive bureaucracy, much of which isn't actually doing anything beyond employing people.
Yeah.
But it's an inertia, because the people you need to get rid of that are the people in it, and no one will vote themselves out of a job.
And therefore, I think it might be a good idea to say, you know what, term limits. We need to stop.
No, but it's not the politicians. It's what I'm trying to say. The politicians are like these few people on top of millions of state employees.
Yeah, true that. The third. How do you call
It's
it?
that
The third layer.
millions. It's that millions that are the problem, because it's one good intention thing after another, all without coordination, all higgledy-piggledy, all, oh, guess what? We got a mess. What a surprise. And if you ever try to suggest fixing it, all these vested interests pipe up, kick up a fuss, cause obstruction. And we get distracted by, the feminists and the whatever. But they are a symptom. They aren't the cause. This is what I keep trying to say. They aren't the cause, because there's some, all the people who say, oh, we want a small government, 100% agree. It's the only way. And if I was to do it again, I would say the first duty of government is to limit itself.
Yeah. But unfortunately, in all of the Western world, our governments have become authoritarian. And this is what I wanted to talk about in my last video. And people are wising up to it. And that's why we're being replaced. Or rather, it's part of why we're being replaced. Because they need people voting for them.
Well, or as I said, they need people who are easy to control. And what better than to bring in people from an authoritarian culture? People whose very culture tells them to submit. Whose very culture is the word submit.
And there is, there is a culture who actually calls itself that. Brilliant, isn't it?
Yeah, and they're the ones coming in. This is my point. It's
Yep.
Okay, I have to head off for tonight, guys. But
Yeah,
thanks
we're
for
going to
having
call
me
it
on
quits
the conversation.
It's we've been nearly at 2 hours. We're going to call it quits. I was thinking about maybe in the future doing 2 live streams, but not as long. But that's something I work on. But yeah, no, you have to head off. We all have to. We all will go away. So I'm going to kind of crack it up. First off, I like to say, Ludicrous, thank you for coming, mate. I really enjoyed you being here.
Sure, thanks for having me.
I hope it's not the last time.
Well, we'll see.
But the cat's out the bag now.
Yeah, but they can be put back, and then the cat
No.
back can be
That's
thrown
the
into
whole
the
point
stream.
of
And
the expression. That's the whole point of the expression.
No more
The
running
cat's
trouble.
out.
anyway, anyone have anything to say as closing statement?
Vote UKIP.
I'm not going to vote UKIP.
Well, of course not.
Obviously.
Somebody might be listening who can vote UKIP.
Well, in that case, guys, do vote UKIP. You know what? Don't vote for Sargon. Vote for Adam and his apple. UKIP Adam. Going to push him a little bit. Why not?
Well, now the media are gunning for him, apparently.
Yeah. He dared make a joke.
Yeah.
Or as he said, a spicy meme. It's not even spicy.
No, but the best thing was is that he did a dankula and explained exactly what he was doing in the video they're now complaining about,
Yep.
denying him saying what he was doing.
Yep. They keep falling for the same things, and the rest of the population are still not aware. It's so... Ugh. Maybe I should start to make ready to join a political party and kick some asses.
Although I have had a complaint that I'm not speaking Irishy enough, so I'll have to try harder next time.
As you
Well,
wish,
yeah,
mate.
but
I don't care either way.
you've got to pick a good region.
Well, back in the day, I
There's
used
so many
to...
Irish accents. I mean, it's like, you know.
Back in the days, on my video, I used to have a mini-me, so to speak, to have some banter, you know, back and forth. And I gave him somewhat of an Irish accent. I'm not sure what you guys thought of that Irish accent. No, it's actually true. I did.
Was it?
Well, I think it was. Wasn't it? It was something.
Uh-huh.
For fuck's sake.
Sorry, just trolling you, mate. Just trolling you.
Yeah, no worries there. But, okay, warped reflection, considering you can't vote for Adam or Sargon, vote for Dankula.
No, she's already said she won't.
Why not?
He's an SNP voter. He is an avowed nationalist.
I thought he went for UKIP as well.
No, he's standing for UKIP, but his history is as a nationalist.
But it's history.
Well, what's the problem with nationalists in this case? I'm curious.
Well, Scottish nationalists. Well, they're a socialist nationalist party. We've never seen that go wrong before.
No, it's not as if there's anything in history where National Socialism was a problem.
No, never.
Never, ever. No.
No,
I
she's
didn't
on the
know
wrong
that.
coast for him anyway.
But having said that, vote whoever you care for. I don't care. It's not up to me to tell you who to vote for. Obviously, if I were running, I would tell you to vote for me. But
If you were running, mate, I'd love to see that.
I have in the past looked into maybe either joining a political party or maybe even founding one. But considering the fact that I'm
Don't.
No.
We don't need more parties. We just need
No,
one good one.
And I am small fries, obviously. But yeah, no, we're no longer at it. I'm sorry, Real Raven. Hi there, Real Raven. Bye there, Real Raven. we are going to call it quits, and I'm starting all over again. This is something for another time, I guess. Anyone have any last words they want to do?
I'm sorry. As soon as John said vote UKIP, I wanted to say subscribe to PewDiePie. Sorry.
No, that's good. That's good.
Okay. Ludicrous, anything you want to plug?
Just my channel and videos. I want to try and promote it as much as possible, as small as it is.
Yeah, Ludicrous Leprechaun, I will, if I'm not mistaken, I will add a link to the text in the bottom. I used to do that always. I stopped doing that, but I will put a link to your channel there, Ludicrous. I hope you will get some positive feedback because of that. Son, you got something?
Well, that's what I said. Vote for subscribe
Okay,
to PewDiePie.
that's it. Then in that case, I'd like to thank everyone in the chat. Warped, Real Raven that just showed up. Toxic, Anita. Toxic was part of the talk for a long time. She left. She came back to sit in the chat. Paolo Costa, welcome to my stream. Actually, I think this is the first time I actually saw you here. I saw you obviously over at Carlos. Michael Keller, I am looking forward to hear from you again. If I've forgotten anyone, sorry I've forgotten you, but I hope to see you all next week when we have another stream wherein John will come out of the closet. I don't know.
I honestly don't have anything to say to that.
I had to say something. It's kind of like the old Beatles making fun of each other. I like the Beatles, by the way, but that's a different story. This is where I'm going to call it quits. I hope to see you all next time, and have a good evening.